This presentation is a summary of the operations topic for business studies in the New South Wales HSC. There are 4 sections to this topic. There's the role of operations, influences on operations, processes of operations, and strategies to improve operations. Firstly, we'll look at the role of operations. Operations involves taking inputs like tools, machinery, natural resources, and human resources, and turning them into outputs, which could be a physical product like a phone, an intangible service like a bank providing accounts and loans, or a combination of both like a restaurant that provides meals, which are a physical good, combined with services such as taking your order and preparing the food. The strategic role of operations is to turn inputs into outputs in a way which allows the business to meet its long-term overall goals. Businesses can approach this in 2 ways. They could use cost leadership, where they attempt to create a product through their operations at a lower cost, such as Kia or Jetstar. Alternatively, they could use good and service differentiation, where they use their operations process to gain a competitive advantage by making a more desirable product, usually at a higher cost, like BMW or first-class seats at Emirates. Operations needs to work with other key business functions for a business to be successful. This is called interdependence, and it is important to note that operations relies on other functions, but these other functions also rely on operations. For example, marketing relies on operations to produce the products it designs, and operations relies on marketing to research the product features which customers want. Finance relies on operations to produce products within the budgets they create, and operations relies on finance to provide them with the funds to purchase inputs. And human resources relies on operations to provide a safe working environment in line with WHS legislation, and operations relies on HR to provide them with the right number of staff with the right skills to carry out the operations process. After role comes influences. It is important to think of these things as influences, so you need to consider how they will impact the inputs, processes, or outputs of a business. There are 8 influences that you need to know, and they can be learned using the acronym CLEG-QT. The first of these is cost-based competition. Not all businesses are impacted by this, but ones who are involved in cost leadership are especially. Businesses influenced by cost-based competition will see this influence through the inputs they use. They'll be looking for more efficient production processes, and they might look to outsource production overseas because it is cheaper. The second influence is CSR, and I'm going to include the E of environmental sustainability here because environmental sustainability is a part of CSR. CSR is an influence on businesses who, rather than being just focused on profit, consider the impact of their actions on other stakeholders. It can include environmental sustainability, which is ensuring that the business is meeting the needs of the current generation without diminishing the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Businesses influenced by CSR and environmental sustainability will consider things such as using recycled inputs, using fair trade inputs, using products which reduce pollution, and they might consider avoiding using outsourcing. Next is legal regulations. There's a difference between these things, which businesses must do, and the previous ethical considerations. All businesses are influenced by legal regulations in their operations process. An example of this is WHS legislation. Specific businesses will be influenced by other regulations. For example, businesses involved in food have food handling laws, which affect the way they carry out their processes. The first G of CLEG-QT is government policy. An example of a government policy which can impact a business is monetary policy, which refers to the Reserve Bank of Australia changing interest rates, and this can have a positive or negative impact on businesses. For example, if interest rates rise, the cost of borrowing money will rise, and will make it more difficult for businesses to purchase machinery used in their operations process. It will also decrease spending in the economy, which will decrease output levels for most businesses. Globalization is the process of barriers being removed or reduced due to things such as advancement in the internet and other communication technologies, and in transport technologies as well. This impacts a lot of businesses in many ways. A common example that people will think of is that businesses can sell their products overseas and increase the amount of customers they have, But you need to avoid this example in this case because that's part of marketing. You need to consider how does globalization affect operations? And whenever we're looking at operations, we're thinking about inputs, processes, and outputs. So when you're looking at globalization as an impact, you need to consider such things as businesses can get their inputs from overseas, or businesses can outsource their production to overseas countries. The next area is quality expectations. Customers are interested in value for money, and they have expectations for the quality of a product given the price that they pay. Businesses can position their products at different levels, but their quality needs to match the expectations that customers expect to have for the price that they pay. Over time, these expectations tend to increase, and so the quality of products must increase to match this. The last area is technology. It's an obvious impact on operations, and it is mostly seen in the process stage of operations. But it could also impact things such as the outputs, which is the products which are being produced, and then therefore also affect the inputs. After influences, we move to processes. And the three steps of processes are inputs, processes, and outputs. Firstly, we're going to look at inputs. Inputs can be divided into two categories. The first are transformed inputs, which can be materials such as ingredients used at a restaurant, information such as recipes used on how to make their food, or customers are an input as they can request what they want to eat, and that can impact the output that is produced. The other type of input is transforming, which can be human resources used in the production process or facilities such as tools and buildings. After inputs comes transformation processes. The first thing we're going to look at is the 4 V's. The first V is volume, which refers to the number of products being made. A higher volume allows a business to achieve economies of scale. The second V is variety, which refers to the number of different types of products created, and this increased cost and complexity when businesses increase their variety. The third V is variation in demand, which refers to products which don't have a consistent output. For example, ice cream has a high variation in demand, so it needs to be made in greater quantities in summer, and this will impact staffing levels. The final V is visibility, which is also called customer contact. It refers to the degree to which customers can affect the production process. An example is in a restaurant if it allows customers to adjust the ingredients used in a menu item. The next element of operations process is sequencing and scheduling. Sequencing refers to the order in which tasks are done in the operations process. Schedule involves deciding when each task will be completed, and there are two tools used to help with this. The first is a Gantt chart, which is a visual view of all the tasks needed to be performed in an operations process. It allows the business to show what will be scheduled and what will be done on a specific day. A critical path analysis shows a plan for how all of the tasks in an operations process will be performed. It shows the minimum time it will take to complete a project. The next area of transformation processes is technology, task design, and process layout. There are three separate things which need to be related to each other. Technology has an obvious influence on the transformation process and allows tasks to be done faster, more efficiently, and more safely. Task design refers to the steps which need to be taken to carry out the operations process. The design will impact the business's efficiency, and it should reflect the sequencing and scheduling. Process layout refers to the way in which a workspace is set out, and it should reflect the task design. You need to be able to relate all three of these areas together. A simple example is a mechanic who invests in a hydraulic lifting machine. This is technology, and as a result of it, the way in which the work is done or the task design is changed, as a mechanic can now stand up to do their work. Having a large piece of machinery in the workshop will also change the process layout. You could go through the same example for a travel agent who used to use a telephone but now uses the internet to book holidays for customers. The final section of transformation processes is looking at monitoring, control, and improvement, which is also three separate things which link together. Monitoring involves measuring the performance of the operations process. This could include measuring the quality of the products or the speed at which they are produced. Control involves comparing the performance of the business, which is found in the monitoring stage, to the expectations that the business had. This will help them to identify any issues and then they can be corrected. The last area is improvement. Businesses should be looking to improve their operations processes. This is especially true if the control step finds areas which need to be addressed. Now we move from transformation processes to output. There are three elements of the output. The first is the product itself. This includes the characteristics and features of the good or the service being provided. In addition to the product, the output also includes any kind of customer service, such as advice, transport and installation. The last part of output is warranties. All products come with a warranty, meaning they need to be repaired, refunded or replaced if they are faulty. But businesses may choose to offer an extended warranty or an additional warranty, and this becomes a feature of the output. We now move to the final section of operations, and that is strategies. This is the way in which businesses can improve their operations. There are 9 of these, which we can learn using the acronym SPORTING Q. S stands for supply chain management, and this is the collection of activities used by a business to bring inputs into the business, store them, move them through the production process, and send them out to customers. There are 3 parts to supply chain management. The first is logistics, and this is the part of supply chain management that plans and implements the movement of goods. E-commerce refers to buying and selling online. In terms of supply chain management, it's not about selling products via a website, but this is about buying inputs online. This allows a business to lower costs by searching for inputs more efficiently and reduce time visiting suppliers. And the last area is global sourcing. This refers to choosing the best inputs for the business regardless of location. It does not necessarily mean importing products because the best supplier still might be a local one. After supply chain management comes performance objectives. This is not a great strategy in itself. It is more saying what targets do we want to meet through our strategies. The performance objectives are quality of the output, the speed, which is how quickly products are made, dependability, which could include having the right products available for customers, flexibility, which refers to the business being able to adjust their product, such as a wedding venue that can alter the number of guests at short notice, or have alternative arrangements in case of poor weather. Customization, which is the degree to which customers can have a say in the output of the business. And cost. If a business is using cost leadership or if they're influenced by cost-based competition, they will have objectives in relation to cost. The next strategy is outsourcing, which is getting another business to carry out some function of the business. In terms of operations, we're generally talking about having a business perform the production process. This usually involves using a low-wage country to carry out the operations, but it could also be taking advantage of the skills or resources in another country. Outsourcing has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage include allowing the business to focus on other functions. For example, Nike are able to focus on their marketing as they outsource their operations overseas. It allows businesses to take advantage of low-wage countries, and this is especially important for businesses using cost leadership, and it also allows the business to take advantage of expertise overseas. The disadvantages include losing direct control over the production process, additional transportation costs, and if the business is overseas, there's a possibility of currency depreciations leading to higher costs. The next strategy is overcoming resistance to change. Now we use the letter R in Sporting Q, and the R stands for resistance. Make sure you talk about overcoming these resistances. Like performance objectives, it's not a great strategy in itself. It's saying that once a decision has been made to change a strategy, the business needs to overcome the resistance to change which results. There are 2 main types of resistance. The first is financial resistance. There are a number of financial resistances to change. There is the cost of purchasing new equipment, the costs involved in reorganising plant layout, the cost of retraining staff in the new operations, and finally redundancy payouts to staff who no longer have jobs because of the changes. The second type of resistance to change is called inertia, which is people having a natural tendency to not want to change and prefer to keep things as they are. In order to make any changes, businesses need to overcome both the financial resistances and this psychological one. The next strategy is to use technology, and this is an obvious way to improve operations. In most cases, it is used to improve the transformation process, but it can also impact the type of output produced and therefore the inputs used. Technology can be established technology, which are technologies which are already in existence, like the internet, or leading edge technology, which is new technology such as nanotechnology. As it becomes adapted, leading edge technologies quickly become established technologies. The next strategy is inventory management. There are advantages and disadvantages of holding stock. If there's not enough stock on hand, the business will lose sales and they'll gain a reputation for being unreliable. If there is too much stock, there are storage costs involved and there's a risk of outputs either becoming spoiled or becoming obsolete. It is therefore important to have the right amount of stock on hand, and this requires an effective inventory management system. There are three approaches to this. The first is FIFO, or first in, first out. This means that the first products to arrive are the first ones which are sold, and this allows the business to reduce the amount of products which spoil. The second one is LIFO, or last in, first out, and this is where the most recent arrivals are sold first. This is used for technology and fashion, where people need to have the latest products. The last example is just in time, which is when inventory arrives just as it is needed. It is best used in situations where it is easy to predict how many inputs are needed and at what time, such as a car manufacturer who orders the right number of parts on the day in which they will be used in the production process. The next strategy is new product design and development. This is a good strategy for businesses to use. Developing new products allows the business to gain a competitive advantage and to meet the needs of the target market. It's the only strategy that doesn't have any extra dot points to cover. The G in Sporting Q stands for global factors. There are global factors in all four topics, and so you need to use them if talking about a global business. In operations, global strategies include global sourcing, which was covered in supply chain management, economies of scale, which is the reduction in per unit costs which occurs when a business increases their production levels. Operating in a global environment allows a business to increase their output and therefore achieve economies of scale. The next one is called scanning and learning. Businesses operating in a global environment are able to find new ways to improve their production process or find new products to develop. The last global strategy is research and development. Rather than getting ideas from other businesses, a business may look to come up with their own new products and processes themselves. This can be expensive, but operating in a global environment allows the business to increase their profits from these activities, so they might be more willing to do it. The final strategy, which is Q, is quality management, and this is any activity designed to improve the quality of output. There are three approaches. The first is quality control, which is checking the product during or at the end of the process to ensure that it meets the quality standards. Quality assurance is putting steps in place to ensure the products will meet quality standards. And the final approach is improvement, which involves identifying any steps in the production process which can be improved upon. If any improvements are made along the process at any stage, it will improve the final output. An example of this in total quality management. And that is all of the strategies, and that ends this summary of the operations topic.